All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into HR compliance for startups.
You know, it's something that every founder knows they should be thinking about,
Oh, absolutely.
but it often gets put on the back burner
Right.
until suddenly, boom, there's a problem.
Yeah, you're exactly.
And, we've got this source material here, and it really looks like a fantastic sort of beginner's guide
Yeah.
to not just avoiding those legal headaches, but really building that company culture you can be proud of.
It's great.
Because, you bring on that first employee, you bring on that 10th employee, and suddenly you're not just a group of friends with a cool idea.
Right.
You have real responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And this source really seems to dive into all the big ones. Wage and hour laws, employee classification, that whole W-2 versus 1099 dilemma.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And then the stuff that can really keep you up at night. Discrimination and harassment prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just about being a good person.
Right.
Although that's obviously important.
This source lays out, the very real consequences
Yeah.
of getting this stuff wrong. I'm talking fines that could seriously put a dent in that startup budget.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to mention lawsuits and that kind of reputational damage you just can't come back from.
Yeah, that's a killer.
It really is.
Reputation is everything, especially when you're starting out.
Absolutely.
And what I find interesting is that so many startups, they kind of fall into this trap of thinking that HR compliance is just about avoiding all of those negative things.
Right, just covering your butt.
Yeah, exactly, like a checklist you have to get through.
Yeah.
But what this source really highlights is the flip side. How getting it right actually fuels that long-term success.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, think about it. When your employees feel valued, when they feel like they're treated fairly, they're way more likely to be engaged.
Right.
They'll stick around longer.
Yeah.
They even become advocates for your company out there in the world.
So it's not just about dodging bullets, it's about building something that's sustainable.
Exactly
that.
It's a much more holistic approach.
But I'll admit, just reading through this list of all these legal areas we need to think about,
Right.
it's a little daunting.
I can understand that.
Where does a founder even begin?
Well, that's where this source, I think, really shines. It breaks it down in such an approachable way,
Okay, good.
even if you don't have a law degree. So let's just start with understanding the core of labor law.
Go.
This source really emphasizes classifying your employees correctly, particularly when it comes to that whole W-2 versus 1099.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe how often this trips people up.
Really?
Oh yeah, all the time. You might think you're saving money by hiring contractors.
Yeah, it seems easier on the surface.
Right,
Oh.
but misclassifying even one employee, that can lead to back taxes penalties and a whole heap of legal trouble.
So it's not as simple as just calling someone a contractor because it's easier, huh?
Not at all.
Yeah.
There are very specific legal criteria that determine worker classification. And this is where I see startups getting into trouble. They're moving so fast,
Right.
laser focused on product development, fundraising. And those kind of detailed legal distinctions can seem like a total distraction.
Yeah, I can see that.
But trust me, it is worth taking the time to get this right from the very beginning.
Right from the start.
Absolutely.
Okay, so employee classification, that's a big one. What about some of those other legal landmines? Like wage and hour laws.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes that startups make there?
Well, the source points out that, again, that rapid growth phase can lead to some oversights.
Uh-huh.
You've got teams pulling all-nighters, founders wearing multiple hats.
Oh, yeah, been there.
Right. And sometimes those basic wage and hour requirements, like tracking overtime accurately for non-exempt employees, they just get overlooked.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're facing a complaint from a disgruntled employee. Or even worse, an investigation from the Department of Labor.
Okay, so we're talking potential legal and financial disaster here.
It can get pretty serious.
But this source doesn't just scare us with what could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
It actually lays out steps to actually become compliant.
It does.
What are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, the first step the source highlights is staying informed.
Okay.
Because labor laws, they're not static. They are constantly evolving.
For sure.
So think of it like keeping your software updated.
Okay.
You need to patch those security vulnerabilities before they become a problem.
Right.
The same goes for your HR practices.
Makes sense.
So subscribing to some legal newsletters, attending industry events, even just setting aside time each month to review updates from the Department of Labor. All that can make a world of difference.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Burying your head in the sand is not an option.
No, it's not going to work.
What's the next step in this compliance journey?
Well, the source emphasizes developing clear written HR policies that are actually in line with the law.
Got it.
So think of this as setting those ground rules for your company culture. And don't just, copy and paste something generic from the internet.
Right.
Take the time to craft policies that really reflect your company's values and ensure that everyone understands their rights and responsibilities.
Right.
So this includes things like an employee handbook, policies on time off, and crucially, your procedures for handling any harassment or discrimination complaints.
So it sounds like having those policies in place not only protects the company, but also kind of sets the tone for how employees are treated and what's expected of everyone.
Exactly. It creates that foundation of respect and clarity.
It can't stop there, though, right?
Absolutely not. This source goes on to stress the importance of training, making sure that everyone on your team, especially your managers, understands those policies and knows how to apply them in real-world situations.
Makes sense.
Imagine you've got this brilliant engineer who's just been promoted to team lead, incredible at their craft, but they've never actually had to manage people before. Without proper training, they could unintentionally create a hostile work environment or make decisions that expose the company to a lot of legal risk.
Right. So you're saying investing in training isn't just about checking a box, it's about empowering your people to be good leaders.
Exactly.
And fostering that culture where everyone feels safe and respected.
That's the goal.
I like it.
And that leads us to another really critical step that's outlined in this source: documentation.
Okay.
It might seem tedious, but keeping meticulous records of everything HR related is absolutely crucial.
Okay, why is that?
Well, think about it this way. If you ever face a legal challenge, those records become your best defense.
I see.
They demonstrate that you've taken compliance seriously, that you've acted fairly, and that you followed those proper procedures.
Yeah, so it's like proof that you're doing things the right way.
Exactly.
Documentation, not the most glamorous part of running a startup.
Not really.
But it sounds like it could save you a lot of heartache down the road.
Oh, absolutely. It's worth the effort.
Okay.
And the final step the source emphasizes is conducting regular audits.
Okay.
So this is about proactively checking your systems, your processes, and your policies. Just making sure everything is still running smoothly and in line with the law.
So like a compliance checkup for your company.
Exactly. And the beauty of these audits is that they can help you identify those potential issues before they become major problems.
Yeah, get ahead of them.
Exactly.
So we've covered kind of the basics of labor law, the key steps to staying compliant. But I'm guessing most startup founders are thinking, this all sounds great, but what are the most common issues I need to watch out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, let's dive into those common challenges next.
Let's do it.
It's interesting how this source frames HR compliance not as this burden, but as a foundation for building a successful company.
Yeah, it really is a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And I think a really crucial one for any founder.
Definitely. Because when you're in that startup mode, it's so easy to get caught up in just the urgency of everything, launching the product, securing funding, scaling fast. Compliance can feel like this annoying obstacle.
Well, absolutely. It's seen as this bureaucratic hurdle.
Yeah.
But the source argues that it's actually the opposite. Compliance is an investment that pays off big time in the long run. Think about it. Treating your employees fairly, creating a respectful and inclusive workplace, those things actually attract and retain top talent.
And top talent is the lifeblood of any successful startup.
It really is. It's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Plus, when your employees feel valued and supported, they're going to be more engaged, more productive, and more committed to the company's mission.
It's like this virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
You invest in your people and they invest back in the company.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
And let's not forget the impact on your company's reputation.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
In the startup world, word gets around quickly.
Yeah, it spreads like wildfire.
I know that firsthand. A bad reputation can be incredibly difficult to shake.
It's almost impossible to come back from sometimes.
Yeah, it's like a stain that won't come out.
Exactly.
So if you're known for cutting corners or mistreating your employees, it's going to be that much harder to attract investors, partners, even customers.
Right. No one wants to be associated with a company that has a bad reputation.
Whereas when you have that reputation for doing things right, being an ethical and responsible employer, that becomes a real competitive advantage.
It does. It's a huge selling point these days.
People want to work with companies that they can trust and respect.
Absolutely. It's about values alignment.
Okay, so compliance isn't just about mitigating risk. It's It's about building a brand that stands for something positive.
Exactly. It's about building a brand that people want to be a part of.
I like that. Okay, but let's get back to those common pitfalls
Right.
the source calls out.
Yeah.
We touched on employee misclassification and wage and hour violations. What are some practical tips for avoiding those?
So for misclassification, the source recommends taking a close look at those IRS guidelines and seeking legal counsel if you're unsure. It's also worth considering using some of those tools that can help you assess worker classification
Okay,
based on specific criteria.
so get some expert help.
Exactly. It's better to be safe than sorry.
And for wage and hour issues, those can be so tricky, especially when you have employees working flexible hours or remotely.
Yeah, that's a common challenge these days. The source highlights the importance of having clear policies in place and, crucially, reliable time tracking systems,
Yeah.
especially with so many remote and hybrid work arrangements now. Accurate timekeeping is more important than ever.
It is.
It protects both the company and the employee by ensuring everyone's compensated fairly for their time.
So it's a win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got tools, we've got clear policies. What about those less tangible but equally important issues, like discrimination and harassment?
Right.
How can startups build a culture that truly prevents those things from happening?
That's where proactive measures come in.
Okay.
It's not just about reacting after something has already happened. It's about creating that culture of respect from day one.
But how do you actually do that? Is it just about having a policy in place?
It goes way beyond that.
Okay.
The source recommends things like regular training on unconscious bias, diversity and inclusion, and recognizing and reporting harassment.
Okay.
But even more importantly, it's about leadership setting the tone.
So it's not just about what you say, it's about what you do.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Leaders need to model respectful behavior, take complaints seriously, and create a culture where employees feel safe speaking up.
It's about creating that psychological safety.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Precisely.
And the source points out that this isn't just about avoiding legal trouble. It's about creating a work environment where everyone feels valued and can actually thrive.
Yeah, when people feel psychologically safe, they're more likely to be engaged, creative, and productive.
It makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about the benefits of compliance, the key steps to take, and the common challenges to watch out for. But let's be real. Implementing all of this can feel really overwhelming, especially for a startup with limited resources.
I understand that.
How do they actually make this happen?
Well, that's where technology comes in.
Okay.
The source really dives into how tech can be a total game changer
Okay.
for startups navigating the world of HR compliance.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
What are some of the tech solutions that can make this whole process less daunting?
Well, first up, there's HR software,
Okay.
which can automate a lot of those manual tasks that used to take up so much time and energy.
I'm all about automating anything that can free up my time
Me too. It's a lifesaver.
to focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Okay.
These platforms can manage everything from employee records and payroll to performance reviews and benefits administration.
So it's like having an extra set of hands, but digital.
In a way, yes.
I like it.
And then there are time tracking tools, which we talked about earlier. These are essential for ensuring accurate record keeping, especially for hourly employees and remote teams.
And with so many companies embracing remote work these days, those tools are becoming increasingly important.
Oh, absolutely. They're essential now.
Yeah.
And then there are compliance management systems. These are platforms that can help you stay up to date on those ever-changing labor laws,
Okay.
create compliant policies, and even provide training resources.
So it's like having a built-in compliance expert
Yeah,
at your fingertips.
exactly. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Okay, I like that.
And finally, the source mentions online training platforms, which can make it easier and more engaging for employees to learn about everything from company policies to preventing harassment and discrimination.
Yeah, it's got to be engaging, right?
It does, otherwise people just tune out.
Definitely. So it sounds like technology can really streamline this whole HR compliance process,
It really can.
taking a lot of the guesswork and headache out of it.
It's a huge help.
But as we've been talking about, technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's still essential to have human oversight and ethical decision-making at the heart of your HR practices.
Absolutely. Technology can't replace human judgment.
This source doesn't shy away from that either.
No, it emphasizes that balance.
You're absolutely right. Technology can automate tasks and provide valuable insights. But it's the human element, the empathy, the judgment, the commitment to doing what's right that truly makes the difference.
It's what separates the good companies from the great ones.
So it's about finding that balance, leveraging technology to streamline and simplify, while always remembering that people are at the center of it all.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And speaking of people, this source really drives home the point that HR compliance isn't just about following rules. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels respected, valued, and empowered to do their best work.
That's the ultimate goal.
It is.
It's about creating a workplace where people can thrive.
That's a powerful message. I think it's something that every startup founder should take to heart.
I agree.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, let's explore how this foundation of compliance can actually help startups build a better future of work.
I'm excited to dig into that.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deal.
We really have.
Everything from those super detailed labor laws to the bigger picture of building an ethical and compliant company culture.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
It really has. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That idea that HR compliance can actually help shape a better future of work.
Oh, that's something I'm super passionate about. Because we're not just talking about, blindly following rules. We're talking about creating workplaces that are just independent.
And that's a pretty radical idea when you think about it.
It is.
For so long, the world of work has been about maximizing efficiency, often at the expense of employee well-being.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's been the traditional model.
But this source suggests a different path, one where compliance isn't just a checkbox, but actually a catalyst for real positive change.
I love that.
Okay, so how does that play out? How can focusing on HR compliance lead to a more positive, a more equitable work experience for everyone?
Well, for starters, when you prioritize things like fair wages, reasonable working hours, and safe working conditions, you're creating this foundation of respect and dignity for your employees.
Sounds pretty big.
It does.
But I guess it's easy to lose sight of those fundamentals when you're in that go startup world.
It really is. And this source reminds us that those seemingly basic things, they had a huge impact on people's lives.
I bet.
When employees feel secure, when they feel valued, they're less stressed, more engaged, and ultimately more productive.
So it's not just about doing the right thing ethically.
Right.
It makes good business sense too.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
I like it. And then there's that whole issue of diversity and inclusion. This source really emphasizes how important it is to create a workplace where everyone feels welcome and has equal opportunities.
Yeah, it's about creating a sense of belonging.
That's not just about, checking those boxes on the diversity report, right?
No.
It's about creating a culture where different perspectives are truly valued and everyone has a chance to contribute their best work.
Exactly. It's about fostering an environment where everyone can thrive.
And when you create that kind of environment, I imagine,
Yeah.
you unlock this whole other level of creativity and innovation,
Oh, absolutely. You're tapping into a much wider range of ideas and experiences.
which in the startup world is a huge competitive advantage.
It's essential for staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And we can't forget about, how the nature of work itself is evolving.
Right.
Remote work, flexible schedules, the rise of the gig economy, the traditional boundaries of employment are kind of blurring.
It's a whole new world of work.
So how does HR compliance fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It seems like things are getting more complex, not less.
They definitely are.
So what do we do?
Well, this source really emphasizes the need to stay agile, informed.
So it's not just about what you're doing, it's about developing mindset.
Exactly. It's about being proactive.
The source points out
That's HR compliance isn't just about avoiding those legal headaches. It's about building a company that you can be proud of.
Absolutely.
A company that reflects your values
Yes.
and contributes to a better future of work.
That's a legacy worth striving for.
It really is. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us. And keep learning, keep growing, and keep building.